Much of what we know about blood types comes from a scientist, Charles Drew, and he's most credited with finding different ways to preserve blood for transfusions. And so as a result, during this time, which was around World War II, we could save many lives because we now had a way to bring blood onto the battlefield and provide transfusions for soldiers. There are 4 basic blood types: A, AB, B, and O. O is what we call a universal donor. What that means is that if anybody has a blood type O, they can safely give blood to anybody regardless of their blood type. Blood type AB is known as a universal acceptor, so they can safely receive blood from anybody regardless of their blood type. Blood types are an example of multiple alleles. So what that means is that there can be more than one combination of alleles that can give you the same blood type. So the alleles that we would use for blood type A has an allele with a capital I and a capital A superscript. We use a capital letter because A is a dominant trait or allele. For blood type B, we represent that using a capital I and a capital B because B is also a dominant trait. So when A and B are together, they are codominant. So we represent that with an I with a capital A and an I and a capital B. And O is the recessive blood type. So the only way to have blood type O is if you have 2 recessive alleles or 2 lowercase i's. So our genotypes for the different blood types: blood type A would be genotype capital with an I with a capital A and an I with a capital A, or because A is dominant, you could put an I with a capital A next to a lowercase I. So this would be homozygous, and this would be heterozygous. B is the same way, except instead of an A, you would put a B. B is also dominant, so we could put it next to the recessive allele. There's only one possible combination for AB, and that's because they're codominant, so you would have an I with a capital A and an I with a capital B, and so that person would exhibit AB blood type. And blood type O, again, the only combination would be 2 recessive alleles. So blood types are an example of multiple alleles, and that's different from something called polygenic traits. So poly means many, and genic means genes. So these are traits that are controlled by more than one gene. For example, eye color, hair color, anything where you can see variation is going to be an example of polygenic traits. Here's an example of a blood type problem. So the problem says cross A and B parents. At any point in a problem that you're dealing with blood types, if you are not told whether the individual is homozygous or heterozygous, you always assume heterozygous. So to cross parent A, we are not told whether they're homozygous or heterozygous. We're going to write that genotype using a heterozygous setup. So capital I with a capital A and a lowercase I. The same with parent B. You complete your Punnett square, and you end up with a 25% chance of AB, 25% chance of A, 25% chance of having a B blood type, and 25% chance of having O.